You notice it too late. She smiles, nods, agrees with everything you say. And somehow, you walk away feeling like you revealed more than you planned. Nothing dramatic happened, no argument, no manipulation you can point at, just a quiet shift. That's the part most people miss. Because real influence rarely looks like control, it feels like connection. There's a popular idea floating around right now that dark psychology is loud, obvious, aggressive. But in reality, it's subtle, especially when it shows up in social dynamics involving women. Not because women are more manipulative, but because social intelligence, emotional awareness, and indirect communication tend to be sharper, more practiced, and more socially rewarded. And when those skills are used strategically, you don't see the move, you only feel the outcome. Let's start with something simple: attention. Not giving it, controlling it. There's a pattern psychologists have tracked for decades: intermittent reinforcement. It's the same system used in casinos, slot machines. You don't win every time. You win just enough to stay hooked. Now translate that into human interaction. Warm, cold, warm again. Interest, distance, then interest again. No explanation. Your brain starts filling the gaps. What changed? Did I say something wrong? Why do I suddenly care more? You weren't chasing at the beginning. Now you are. That's not accidental. It's how unpredictability increases perceived value. And here's the uncomfortable part. The less consistent the reward, the more addictive it becomes. Now zoom out. Most people think attraction is about what's shown: looks, words, personality. But a large part of it is actually about what's withheld: information, emotion, clarity. There's a reason ambiguity works. Your brain hates unfinished patterns. So when someone is slightly unclear, not fully readable, not entirely available, you invest more mental energy trying to solve them. And effort creates attachment, not because they gave you something, but because you gave them your attention. Here's where it gets interesting: social mirroring. You've probably heard this one before: matching someone's tone, body language, interests. It builds comfort, trust, familiarity. But when it's done intentionally, it can create something stronger. The illusion of, this person gets me. You like a certain type of music? So do they. You have a specific opinion? They align with it. Just enough. Not perfectly, just enough to feel real. Now your brain starts labeling them as similar. And similarity is one of the fastest shortcuts to emotional closeness. But here's the twist. If the mirroring fades later, you don't question the technique. You question yourself. Did I imagine it? Did they change? Did I? That confusion keeps you engaged longer than clarity ever would. Let's talk about validation. Not giving it, controlling when it appears. There's a difference between constant approval and selective approval. One feels nice, the other feels valuable. If someone validates you all the time, your brain normalizes it. It loses weight. But if validation shows up rarely, unexpectedly, it hits harder. Now you start working for it. Not consciously, but behavior shifts. Tone changes, effort increases. You try to stay within whatever earned that approval. Again, no one told you to do that. It just happens. Now layer everything together. Unpredictable attention, strategic ambiguity, mirroring, selective validation. Individually, these are normal human behaviors. Together, they create a system, a loop. You invest, you get a small reward, then uncertainty,
Then you invest more. Over time, the emotional math becomes uneven. You're putting in more than you're receiving, but it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like progress. That's the illusion. And here's where most explanations go wrong. They turn this into a men versus women narrative. It's not. These patterns exist across everyone, but the expression differs. In many social environments, women are conditioned to communicate indirectly, to read emotions faster, to manage perception more carefully. So when darker patterns emerge, they don't look aggressive, they look natural. That's why they're harder to detect. There's also something else at play: plausible deniability. If a behavior is subtle enough, it can always be explained away. I didn't mean it like that. You're overthinking. I was just busy. And sometimes that's true, but the effect remains the same. You feel uncertain, and uncertainty keeps you engaged because the brain would rather chase clarity than accept ambiguity. Now zoom out further. Why does any of this matter? Because in a world driven by attention, the person who controls emotional focus controls the dynamic. Not through force, but through timing, presence, absence, reaction. And most people don't realize they're in that system until they're already invested. There's a quiet irony here. The more someone tries to win attention, the more they lose control of it. And the person who seems least attached often has the most influence, not because they're better, but because they're harder to predict. So the question isn't, do women use dark psychology? That's too simple. The real question is, how often do you confuse emotional impact with genuine connection? And if the feeling is strong, but the pattern is inconsistent, is it chemistry or is it design? Because once you start noticing the pattern, you can't unsee it. And that's where things get complicated.